So I grew up in an amazing family. We were all Christians, went to church on Sunday, had an amazing relationship with God. And then when I was 13, I woke up one night, it was 1999, and I woke up about 3 in the morning and I could hear this massive commotion. I wandered through my mum's room because I could hear this noise, and I go around through to the ensuite, and my dad is lying unconscious on the ground, and mum is kind of kneeling over him, going, I don't know if I can feel a pulse. I don't know if I can feel a pulse. And what had happened was he'd had an asthma attack. He was a real mild asthmatic, so it was nothing we ever really expected. And he'd had a sudden asthma attack, had passed out, and we lived in the country, so we were a long way away from any real medical support. And so I'm praying for him, and then at some point, it took forever, maybe 3/4 of an hour or so for an ambulance to get out to where we were. I get sent off to my room, and I'm sitting in my room, 13 years old by myself, and I look around and I have all these pictures on my walls of this cartoon series that I liked. My walls were covered. And then I'm just looking at them, and then it was like a voice or a thought, and it got pushed in. And the thought said, if you rip all your cartoon posters down, God will heal your dad. And I knew instantly that that was a lie. And I remember thinking, that's dumb. God doesn't work that way. He's not going to kill my dad or let my dad die because I've got posters of a cartoon on my wall. So I just ignored it. And then a little bit of time went by. I'm still sitting there by myself, and somebody at some point came to tell me that my dad had died. And this thought whispered into my ear, and I remember it was on the right ear, and it wasn't audible, but I could feel it going into my mind. And it said, it's your fault that he died. If you had done what I said and ripped those posters down, he'd have lived. And in that moment of trauma and vulnerability, that thought just went deep into me. And this incredible sense of shame and guilt wrapped around me. From that day to about 16 or 17, I started having these incredible waves of, I would call it condemnation. It would build up over about 3 days to the point that I would end up in a fetal position in the corner of a room, just totally crippled by fear. And then I'd be crying out to God, you gotta help me with this, you gotta help me, you gotta help me. And it would lift off, and I'd get this reprieve, and I'd be like, this peace would come back. I'd be like, but the peace was only ever temporary. And I remember one day walking down the street, and then I said, God, am I always going to be like this? Is this life for me now? And he just spoke so quickly. You were never like this before your dad died. And I was like, that's right, I wasn't. I ended up going to this course that we had at our church. It began to teach me that when we're in a space of trauma or pain or grief or whatever it is, and a lie gets spoken into our life, that lie is like a seed. And it drops down into our being, and it begins to put down roots, and it begins to grow, and it grows into this big, gnarly tree. And then this tree produces this rancid, rotten fruit. And what we do is we try and pick the fruit off so we stop having all these negative experiences. And I was having these big bouts of condemnation and anxiety and guilt. And it was like this rotten fruit. And I'd have people pray for me. It was like they would, go around and they'd pick all the rotten fruit off the tree. And I'd have peace for a while, but the tree remained because the lie hadn't been addressed, and the fruit would just grow back. Or maybe I'd have a big God encounter and I'd be like the tree would get, all the branches pruned off, but given enough time, the branches would grow back and then they'd produce fruit again. And I just got stuck in this hopeless cycle. I remember they went to pray for me and I had my eyes closed. And they went to put their hand on my head and my head just weaved out of the way, like involuntarily, like a boxer just weaved. And they were like, oh. So they went to put their hand on me again and my head whoosh, weaved again. And and I was like, well, this is weird. My head's moving on its own. And I have this realization that there's been this demonic thing that has been wrecking my life. And I just start laughing. And they go, why are you laughing? Like, this isn't funny. And I was so happy because I'm like, I am moments away from freedom. Like, freedom is here. Like, this is going to be awesome. God's greater. This is incredible. And then eventually they managed to get me. They pray for me. And I think I did this massive burp, and I was like, I was expecting more, and I was kind of like, am I better? Like, is that it? And from that moment on, I never struggled with that sense of condemnation, that overwhelming sense of guilt and shame and losing my appetite, not being able to sleep. I was just free. And it was so simple. It was just a lie that got spoken into my life in a moment of intense vulnerability and trauma. And it took its opportunity, it rooted, it grew into a big gnarly tree. But in one moment, it finally got ripped out, roots and for all. And I was like, I had my life back. There is so much in my life that He has redeemed me from. He's an incredible Father. He's a best friend. He's so much stronger. He's so much bigger. He's so much brighter. He's so much more powerful. Like, even darkness is light to Him. He holds the world in His hands. And He's proven Himself time and time again to me at the end of the day to be all that I really need. His love is just so much greater.